Okay.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Thank you, Chris.
Well,
So, Thomas, the floor is yours.
Okay, but not without saying hello to George.
Sorry, team. I've just got a train from London to Manchester that's run well late on me, which is why I'm late here. But good to see everybody.
Yeah. Okay. So the title of my speech, I think all of you can see my screen, is Alone in 8,876 meters above sea level. And first of all, I have one slide I didn't show in UK. That's a short presentation of myself. So I'm Thomas Fink, 69 years old.
You look much younger.
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully 70 in 6 weeks. Or no, it's 10. Anyway, married with my wife Angelica. We have a son, 23 years old again, studying mechanics at Tech University in Munich, and we are a happy family. By profession, I'm a structural engineer, also from Technical University Munich, and I'm founder and longtime CEO of Sophistic AG. That's a company which is well known for software for structural engineers, for analysis, design, and detailing of civil engineering constructions of all kinds, bridges, buildings, tunnels, towers, whatever. I'm pilot for hot air and gas balloons since a long time, since 1983. And in the 90s, I became twice world champion for gas balloons in 1994 and 1996, 4 times national champion in gas balloon, and a lot of more achievements. I'm flight instructor, flight examiner, and as a balloon pilot, happy member of IFFR since the Hamburg Convention in 2019. Since 2022, I have a PPL for single engine piston. You see here my wife and me after my first flight with a valid license with instructor and passenger in front of our hangar at Nuremberg Airport. It's a new experience for me, and I like that very much. I like that so much. So many people told me that in my age, an IFR license is impossible to get, that I thought, let's try. And would say maybe 10 or 15 more hours, and I can go for the check ride. And of course, I'm Rotarian since 1997. I'm past president, past district governor. And you see here the official photograph of Holger Knag and Susanne, Angelica, and myself from San Diego. So that's very short my life. Let's go to the topic. 8,876 meters, question marks. Where could it have been? So we had in our newspaper, we had a headline, conquered 8,000 meters, and this in the middle of Bavaria. So we had a lot of press around that activity. 8,800 meters, you all know that. That's flight level 290. So much higher than all these single engine pistons may go, as far as I know. So could it be the Mount Everest? I asked Wikipedia, and Wikipedia tells that the Mount Everest is only 8,848.86 meters high. And so it was not the Mount Everest, it was higher. And you all know, it's no surprise, it was in a gas balloon. You see here the almost fully rigged gas balloon. To get with a gas balloon in high altitudes, you only fill it half or maybe 1/3 could have been sufficient. And then when you climb, the hydrogen in the envelope expands, and at the top of climb, the balloon looks like a balloon. So how or why did I do that? So it happened in a balloon. I made more or less incidentally a German duration record in '89 that was close to 40 hours in a flight from Lech on the Arlberg in Austria to the border from Hungary to Romania. And you know, in '89, the world ended for us at the Romanian border. And then I got a little bit more appetite and checked the list of all the records and thought the current German altitude record was 6,000 and something meters, should be beatable. As an engineer, my life consists of planning, and so my first action to prepare for the record was to write a letter to the German ATC, which was a public, not a company, but administration at these times. And the answer I got on that letter, so I wrote them, I want to make an altitude record launching from Augsburg in southern Germany. And the answer was, "Dear Mr. Fink, we regret that we have to tell you that due to ATC procedures and volume of traffic, your project cannot be permitted, yours." So I was a little bit, not so happy about that answer, and I thought I call that person who signed this letter. Toughness leads to the goal. So I called him and asked him, what's the problem? Yeah, we have the air traffic, the approach into Munich. And then I asked him, or I told him, I think they have takeoff and landing is not permitted during nighttime in Munich Riem at the old airport. And then this guy asked me, "Can you fly balloon during nights?" So he had no idea about flying balloons, but I think they thought it's better to not to accept my project. Anyway, he could not really justify his rejection, and I got an approval some weeks later. That's a longer letter, and I translated the main points into English. "Dear Mr. Fink, in response to your objections and suggestions, the department has re-examined whether and under what conditions your project can be carried out. We are ready to make your record attempt possible if the following conditions are strictly adhered to. First, take off only at nighttime, landing no later than sunrise. Second, in the attachment, you can see, George, I think you should mute Charles, because I think he makes the noise. In the attachment, you can see where constant air traffic is to be expected in the area of responsibility of the Munich Regional Office, also at night. An unhindered ascent is only guaranteed in high altitude winds from a general easterly direction. The balloon must be equipped with a radio and an altitude-coded Mode C transponder. The power supply of the equipment must ensure proper operation for the duration of the flight. In the event of a radio failure during ascent, the project must be cancelled immediately. The descent must then be carried out with a sink rate of at least 5 meters per second. By the way, that's close to the maximum descent rate according pilot handbook. But as I said, these administrative guys had no real idea about balloons. And the fourth was the easiest one. An agreement must be made with the supervisor at the Munich Regional Control 12 hours before takeoff. After completion of the launch preparation, the takeoff clearance must be obtained by telephone. Okay, I thought I could do that. Now let's have a look. The red on the map I got. The red circle is the control zone of Augsburg. Here in the north is Nuremberg. Here, can you see my mouse?
No.
So anyway, in the north is Nuremberg, and here is the Dinkelsbühl VOR, which still exists. It's here in this narrow angle of the red lines. That was the map. So I started preparations. First of all, I talked with my aeronautical doctor and checked the self-conscious time and learned that in level 250, I have 3 to 5 minutes without oxygen where I can act. And in level 350, I have only 90 seconds. So for me, it was essential to have a proper and tested oxygen supply with an optical indication where I can see whether the oxygen flows or not, because the doctors told me that no one can self-check whether he's under oxygen or not, so you have to control it. I made a decision to do it without a co-pilot and rather have more technology on board. I come to the technology later. I had to organize all the technology because obviously I didn't have that in these times and definitely not redundant. So I needed a second oxygen supply. I organized 2 transponders. I had 3 radios, and clothing was another important topic. And after having all these available, I waited for the weather, and on a Saturday I made, or on a Sunday I made a balloon flight from Augsburg and found that the weather looks very, very good for the next day, and we started. Here you see in Augsburg, it was a real traditional, in these times, very heavy wicker basket with a balloon you saw before. Here is the balloon master who helped preparing, and this is the rest of a friend on the left side who helped me to install all the equipment. And with the red anorak, that's me. Let's come to clothing. I have always here extracts of the flight report I made. I made a some pages long flight report from this. So now it was time to change. The following clothes were supposed to protect me from the expected -50 degrees at an altitude of 9,000 meters in order from inner to outer. I bought a special underwear brand Saleva North Cape. I thought what's good for North Cape could also be appropriate for -50 degrees in the air. Of that, ordinary jeans and a turtleneck pullover. Then the inner lining of the anorak. I also had a special anorak. A Gore-Tex ski suit. And over that, the Gore-Tex anorak, the red one you saw, the outer lining. And then I made the decision not to take moon boots due to mobility after landing, but I used my normal Adidas trekking boots, which I used for flying balloon at these times. This is how I looked before takeoff. The lady here with the yellow jacket was the visual observer, so I had a a mechanical barograph with coal on aluminum, and so no pen, but some graving into the coal, which works for all temperatures. This is here how I checked something. And then we come to the flight. So first, the launch was delayed because there was a lot of press and they wanted photographs and the balloon was not ready. And I had concerns that I not do it until sunrise. So I called by phone the guy from ATC and told him that, sorry, we are too late and we cannot do that. And then he told me, and I will never forget this, he said, Mr. Fink, you fly balloon now and let me take care about the airplanes. By the way, there was no airplane in my area, only some planes, some levels higher, coming from the Gulf region into London or so. So there was nothing. There was a Medivac coming from Salzburg to Zurich, and that was all. So I drifted north, wrong direction. And landing was no longer possible at night. I had radio failure. I had 3 radios, 2 radios on the ATC frequency and 1 handheld on the chase crew, on the balloon frequency. So first I had an oxygen mask with an integrated mic. But as I stood in Augsburg in the night in very humid conditions and climbed, the mic was frozen and did not work anymore, something I did not had in my plan. I ascended and I climbed and I got a new clearance from ATC, and I read the clearance back. Then the clearance came again. I made my read back, and then the controller asked me, Delta Augsburg, in case you can understand me, squawk ident. And then the controller knew that I was not able to transmit. By the way, the second radio, then there was a handheld mic and the button was frozen and did not work anymore. And the third radio was the handheld. There was the frequency under a glass, and the glass was frozen from inside. And I decided not to change the frequency, because without the indication of the frequency, I can end in nirvana. And so I could at least talk to my chase crew, and as there have not been mobiles at these days, they at least could go to a telephone box and call ATC and give them a message. Anyway, the lights of Augsburg, Munich, and Nuremberg had been visible. I saw the Alps as a small, like a shit from a cow. And top of climb was after 45 minutes. I had sun and it became really warm regardless of the minus 45 or minus 50 degrees I had, because I had no wind in the balloon. In a balloon, you always have no wind. Then I could have climbed higher, but I decided to stop climb because I broke the record by far. And I had 6 bags of sandballast as a reserve still. I could easily have thrown 3 of them, but I didn't know how it works, the descent from such an altitude, and I knew no one who could tell me that. By the way, it was totally simple. I was only pulling the valve and descending, and as the air becomes denser, and then I had, my only job was to keep the balloon descending. Everything slowly thawed out again, And when I got the air controller again, he asked me, "Oh, so have you been descending due to me? I was just preparing your next clearance." And then I told him everything fine and so on. And the landing was totally hassle-free, one of the easiest landings on a green near Gunzenhausen, which is very close to Nuremberg, some 100 kilometers or 90 kilometers north of the launch field. And the whole flight took 1 hour and 50. Unfortunately, I do not have any photograph from the air. And the photographs at the landing had also been a little bit poor. But on the left side, you see that the sun was just rising on the ground. So the official observer got the barogram, and they sent it to the University of Aachen, and they found, out of which reasons ever, they calculated the altitude of 8,876 meters. And after some weeks, I got a message from the National German Aero Club. That's recognition of the altitude flight. "Dear Thomas, I would like to inform you that after checking all the evidence and documents, your altitude flight on March 19th, 1990 was recognized as a German record. And by the way, since then, the record is valid, which is in 1 month. We have it 34 years. I never expected that this will count such a long time. I never, ever expected. Then there was a lot of press in the local newspaper. Here was a press, Oskar Lafontaine, the former chairman of the Social Democratic Party in German, and below Thomas Fink, balloon pilot from Nuremberg. We had that on another paper, and so there was one person who made the photographs, and I think he earned a lot of money by selling all the newspaper and magazines this story. This is here with the barograph. They wrote that the Nuremberg structural engineer Thomas Fink is the best balloon pilot in Germany, which is not wrong. I'm the one who made the highest flight. And record topless it's also a nice headline. And I come to the resume, and the resume is a quote from the flight report. It's to sum up: with careful planning, optimal weather conditions, and my experience as a balloon pilot — by the way, the experience was not so big these days — a project of this kind is no more dangerous than a Saturday evening flight with passengers. It turned out that there is room for improvement in the equipment, and above all, the multiple presence of important equipment does not cause any damage. So this is translated now, but the text is originally 34 years ago. And as I already said, the record is still valid, and now I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thomas, I have a question for you. What is your best memory of that flight?
That's a good question. So I think the feeling at that altitude. So I stayed 5 minutes at that altitude. I already had sun. I saw the Alps, very small, because the altitude is, if you fly from Munich to Milano, I think you are not higher. So and this in this view and yeah, I opened my anorak, and because it became too warm for me. So this was the feeling. I still did not know how the descent worked, but nowadays I know that if someone breaks that record, I can still, I can most likely still beat it, because we now have lighter balloons than at these times. So it was, I was simply surprised that it was so easy at the end.
Did you have to file a flight plan? And if so, was it a VFR or IFR plan?
It was a VFR flight plan.
That you were under ATC control all the time?
Yeah.
Yes.
Special VFR then.
Yeah, it's VFR, but controlled.
Yeah,
And
but
it was a
special VFR
controller
because it was
who-
above 195. No,
Pardon?
I should suggest it was special VFR, not just VFR. Special VFR.
Okay, call it how you like.
Yeah. Okay. No.
On the flight plan, so the flight plan for a balloon is really
Always.
it's a lot of sets in the flight plan and a lot of remarks. No, because I cannot tell a destination. I have no four-letter code for the launch field. I have almost nothing, which is normally in a flight plan.
Can you show us a copy of the flight plan?
No, not. I'm not sure. It's not in. So for the preparation of that, I have all papers in a file, but I don't know whether I have a copy of the flight plan. In these days, you filed the flight plan by phone, because I had definitely no telex, and there was there was internet, but
Yeah. Well,
I don't think that ATC had internet.
no.
And if you file a flight plan via phone, you don't get a receipt.
Maybe you could stop the share, Thomas.
Yeah.
It's nicer. Okay, lovely.
Well, I suggest that you raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question.
I have a question.
I don't see any hands, so Thomas, I'd like to
Cyrus.
ask the question myself.
Cyrus
So,
has.
Roland, Cyrus
Chris,
had his
please.
hand up. Cyrus Waddy's got his
Sure,
hand up.
Cyrus, please.
Hello, yes. Thomas, you mentioned you were surprised that the record has lasted for so long. Can you think of reasons why? Is it the environment has changed, or people's attitudes, or what reason can you think that it has lasted for so long?
Difficult to answer. In any case, now the ATC is on some kind it's easier, because it's now a service organization and not an administration. But the traffic is much more even in the night, but I still think that it's manageable. So, by the way, I made a training flight with a student pilot this morning, and I showed him how to enter the airspace delta over Nuremberg, which is still simple and possible. I've no idea why no one tried to do it. So there are a lot of, I'm now responsible for the homologization of all the national records for the German Aero Club in ballooning. And we have some record attempts, but only in other classes and in altitude, not in altitude, but in distance and duration.
Okay, thank you.
Nick?
I think that Chris had a question, and I see that Nick has raised his hand as well.
Yeah.
Please, Chris.
Go ahead, Nick.
Okay, thank you very much. Thomas, first of all, thank you very much for your interesting presentation. You started your presentation with an introduction of yourself, and you told us that by not so many years ago, you also made your PPL. What made you decide going from the ballooning to the PPL side of it?
I'm flying balloon now for almost 50 years.
Yeah.
And it's not a challenge for me anymore. And I also decided my son is balloon pilot as well, and he started with competitions, and then I thought it's a good point for me to stop doing competition. So I'm mainly with balloons. I'm doing flight training and working as an examiner. And I needed a new challenge. And I was, so I must say that my membership with IFFR and listening to or joining events like tonight also influenced me. And the third was my best friend made a PPL. He's the one who was co-pilot for the 2 World Championships. And during pandemic, we made a walk with the wives, and we talked, and he told me about flying and so. And then I said, Rainer, I think I should go for my license now, and when I have the license, we fly together to the North Cape. That was the plan. Unfortunately, he was not so happy with the flying when I had my license. So he's now flying balloon a lot, and told me that he will not use his or will not extend his SAP license anymore. So I was, a fun fact is, I made now a cruise to North Cape, where I came back 1 week ago. By the way, North Cape in winter is something very special. But for me, it was really convenient. It was a challenge, something to keep my brain working. And when I started with the PPL, my instructor told me, Thomas, that's not so easy, and your age, and blah, blah, blah. But for me, it was some of the subjects in the theory have been no problem. So it took about 1 quarter until my flight instructor believed me that I know more about meteorology than he, because for balloon pilots, it's much more important.
Which airport are you flying off?
Pardon?
Which airport are you flying off?
Nuremberg, Echo Delta Delta November.
I know it very well. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very nice airport. We have an aero club there. We have 2 C-172, 3 PA-28, and now 2 DA-40 and G.
Yeah.
And with a reservation system, I can go by bike to the airport. The training, so it took me for the practical training, it took me almost 100 hours and 2 check rides. But my belief was always flying is fun, whether it's before getting the license or thereafter.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really something new. And one of the advantages is ballooning is always a lot of organization because you cannot do it alone.
Mm-hmm.
And now I can cycle to the airport, pull the plane out, call for refueling, and go.
Yeah, beautiful airport and a very nice restaurant around. I know it very well. Schindlerhof in Boxdorf.
Yeah.
I was quite often there, so it's great. Thank you very much, Thomas.
Yeah.
Thomas, I have a question for you. You mentioned that you could go higher because you had still 6 sandbags left.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. What is the limiting factor for how high you can fly?
It's the weight of the balloon and the ballast. You must know that you need a ballast. Normally, you need a ballast in a gas balloon for landing, because in ISA atmospherical conditions, if the balloon descends and if there is no sun, then the balloon descends with a certain speed until it crashes into ground. So to stop the descent, you have to make the balloon lighter. And this is by dropping water or sand.
I
And
see, yes.
at this descent, when the sun came up, the sun heated the hydrogen, and that made the balloon lighter as well. So I had only to work against the heating of the balloon. And the next effect was the air. We had a ground inversion, obviously, and these stable weather conditions. So without pulling, the balloon does not land anyway. Because the ground inversion, the balloon floats in the ground inversion like a ship on the sea.
It sounds very complicated to be a balloon pilot.
It's not. So it's different. It's simply different. And by the way, my examiner at my second check ride, he told me, so Mr. Fink, I know you are very at home in the air, but please remember, an airplane is something different than a balloon. As I didn't have the result of the second airplane at that moment, I bit on my tongue not to give him an answer on that. So otherwise I would have said, oh, it's something I have still to think about.
Good, right.
I had another question because you went up to flight level 290, something like that, and then you're still in the troposphere. Is it possible to go into the stratosphere and land safely back on the Earth or not?
Yes.
To go higher.
Some people, so the world records for gas balloons are from NASA in the 50s and 60s when they prepared the space program. And there was also this crazy guy this Austrian who went up in a balloon and jumped out. The same did Mr. not Kissinger, was his name, some an American soldier in the 60s. But for a valid record, the plane has to land with a pilot and not without the pilot. So that's maybe is a valid parachute record, but not a valid balloon record.
But it is possible to do that. To go
it's
into
possible, yes. They had been in 35,000 feet. And there are projects with balloons going into the stratosphere, and as there is no wind anymore, they can stay stationary and do some radio relay and these tasks.
Okay.
I think it's the same with planes. You can also go out of the troposphere with a plane.
Yeah. But there you have wings.
Yeah, but
wings and an engine.
Yeah. So if there are no more questions on that, the next would say at least 10 slides are some photographs from the tango tour in Australia I had in this slide deck. So if you like to see it, I would share the screen again, but only if you like to see it. And
yes, please.
And if there are no questions.
It's a good teaser for those who didn't enter the flyaway in Europe. So
yeah.
Do join us.
Yeah. So first of all, Australia is a big country. So I thought what we flew there, so this flight from the straight flight to the north took us, depending on the plane, 2.5 to 3 hours, and you're still very close to the shoreline. So it's really incredible large. This is in, and you really don't see my mouse?
No, no.
No, don't understand why. You see here,
Thomas, I have made you a co-host, so you ought to be able to use your mouse now. I'm not sure.
yeah, but how? Normally I have no idea, and I don't want to spoil. So on the right bottom, there is a small circle. This is the training flight I did with Ruud. It's a Dutch pilot, and we shared a plane together. And then we flew from Melbourne, so on the very east point of the course, into Warrnambool, which is a whale fisher town on the shipwreck coast. We flew over the Gold Coast with the 12 Apostles, very scenic flight. And then the long flight into Mildura in the outback, where we had a bush dinner, an outback dinner with the local Rotary Club. Very, very impressive. And then along the Murray River to, oh, help me, George, or what was the name of the city on the north of Melbourne?
So you're into after Warrnambool, we went up to Mildura.
Yeah.
And then from Mildura we couldn't fly to Broken Hill.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the boat trip on the last day sort of thing?
Yeah.
That was Echuca, wasn't it?
Anyway, it doesn't matter how it's called. Anyway, this is our course. We had been a little bit unlucky with the weather. This is in a open air museum in Warrnambool. You see Christian here and his wife Gudrun on the left side, and they showed us these dogs who protected the penguins on an island against don't know which.
It was to stop the rats getting them, wasn't it?
Yeah. So we had always, so the journey was like the journey this year was planned with always 2 nights in the same hotel. So it was 1 day flying and 1 day sightseeing. This is a very nice picture of the 2 pilots and my wife as a passenger in the back of the C172. This is the south coast close to Melbourne. The 12 Apostles. So we flew over the 12 Apostles. There are air corridors, one direction in 1,000 feet, other direction in 2,000 feet with blind radio transmissions mandatory, but there was no traffic. It was out of season. This on the left, the Apostles again. On the right, the countryside, a lot of farmlands. This is the rainbow. So from Warrnambool to Mildura, we had a would not say critical, but difficult weather situation with a lot of rain. These photographs are all from my wife, by the way, from the back seat. The clouds over the windmills. Then we came over several deserts. Left are some rests of mines. And on the right side, you see one of the little roads. Then Mildura is well known for the wine. They do not need mountains or hills for the wine. They have wine fields. Yeah, and that's it. So was really a very, very nice end of our 4 weeks in Australia. And even so, my wife is not, so she flies with me, but if she must not fly, it's not so bad, but she liked that as well.
Thomas, I think as your map made clear, for example, when we headed north, it was like we turned the corner at Warrnambool, and then it was, oh, as you say, nearly 2.5 hours flying to Mildura. And you could literally go absolutely straight line with virtually no height restrictions. No, that was it, just that. And you think, in Europe, could you fly for 2.5 hours without something getting in your way when you're a VFR flight sort of thing? And you just sort of pointed the aeroplane in the right direction and kept going. And as you headed north, from the coast, the ground beneath you just got slowly, less green and more red sort of thing. But yeah, it was an amazing experience to be flying in the outback like that. So.
The only downside was that at least during this season, there were some clouds in the way sometimes. But by the way, I was a little bit slow also stretching my memory or so. Echuca was the last town we were.
Yeah, correct. And we should mention that Mildura is an airport with 2 real long runways. Qantas operates with an A320 there, and the airport is uncontrolled.
It is advised that even if you're sort of virtually number one, you give way to these guys when they're coming in, didn't they? So,
Yeah, but they have to transmit blind. It's Mildura traffic, not Mildura radio, and not at all Mildura tower. There is in the country, there is not, I think there is no real ATC operating. Or at least not below level 100.
I know our American brethren were somewhat struggling with the idea that they didn't have flight following all the way, and it was like you just get on with it and just go, wasn't it? I mean, they were like, used to having their hand held all the way in America. Yeah, they got there.
Many years ago, we did a rotary flyabout in Australia, starting in Melbourne, and went all the way up to Alice Springs. That was a lovely exercise. And we had to go, I remember well, we had to go through a training in case of problems flying out of air control. And we learned how to signal with mirrors and things like that.
Yeah, if you go cross country, you don't need a flight plan, but I would say some kind of flight plan light. So you have to tell someone what you are doing, and this person is reliable if you don't call them after arrival to phone someone who does the search and rescue.
We actually, rather than filing with SAR Watch, Search and Rescue Watch, we had the system whereby one of our fellow members from New Zealand agreed to be effectively our SAR Watch. And we had a WhatsApp group of all of the pilots, and as each aircraft departed, you would say aircraft registration, persons on board, leaving from, for destination blah. And he would then write on a piece of paper each of the aircraft as they had written, had taken off with their expected time of arrival. And then you just WhatsApped message again when we landed at our destination. And that way he could check that everybody was out, everybody was in. And that, he was then ready to, if there were any delays, he would have been able to contact SAR Watch and the rescue people on our behalf. But it worked very well as a self-managed sort of safety system.
Yeah, and there is a local app like Sky Demon for Australia, And on this app, you saw all the other airplanes in the group, or not only the ones in the groups, you saw all airplanes with transponder.
And what was even better, they gave you a 1 month free trial of this app.
Yeah.
So you had the whole shooting match, and we all sort of signed up for it when we got there. And yeah, it was a very good localized version of electronic flight bag. Some of the people had bought the Australian add-on pack for 4Flight, those who particularly are 4Flight fans, which is sort of fine, it worked, but the Australian system was, again, built by Australians for Australians. And so, for example, in their weather reports, like when you're coming back into Melbourne, one of the things you need to know is you're going to go through a certain pass back into over the hills into Melbourne, called the Kilmore Gap. And this particular Australian flight bag would tell you what the weather conditions were like in the Kilmore Gap, whether it was VFR or not, which 4Flight just didn't have. So, yeah, interesting to see 4Flight worked, but the Australian flight bag, I think, was actually, more user-friendly for Australia.
Gentlemen, before we make room for general topics, I think it would be appropriate to thank Thomas for his wonderful presentation by a big hand. Thank you very much. Thank you. It was very interesting.
Yeah, it was my pleasure, and I hope to meet a lot of you in Copenhagen or in Brussels. And
the whole tour. The whole tour.
Yeah, if you like to thank me much more than clapping the hands, I always accept an invitation for a beer.